Built it right, built it strong, built it fast, built it done, built it true, built it real, yeah, I built it.
All right, we are ready to rock. It is not as windy as last time I recorded. It's a fairly nice 65 degrees Fahrenheit here today, the correct temperature index. And sunny, beautiful, slight northern breeze. Nothing too much to complain about. Enjoying it. Enjoying the summer. The winters here, they're pretty hit and miss. This past winter was not too bad, but always do enjoy the beautiful spring and summer. Anyway, you're not here to listen to me talk about the weather. You're here to talk about making stuff happen, how to do projects, right? So let's get into it. So today I want to talk about the power that having a shared vocabulary buys you. Right? The power that being able to speak the same language on a team when you're doing project development, project operations, team projects in general. The more unified your team is in the way you go about communicating to one another, what that buys you. So I talked previously about the Tower of Babel problem, which if you missed that, well, first of all, you should go back and listen to it. It's pretty interesting, but the Tower of Babel problem in short is just saying, hey, when your team doesn't speak the same language, doesn't use the same vocabulary, can't explain your project in the same way, you're not going to be able to get stuff done, right? Just like what happened in the Tower of Babel. When their languages were confused, they were unable to coordinate. They're unable to communicate, you can't coordinate. Hey, that's pretty good. Should be a t-shirt. If you can't communicate, you can't coordinate, right? And I always joke, if it rhymes, it must be true. And that rhymes, so therefore it must be true. So if you can't communicate, you can't coordinate. If you can't coordinate, you can't get stuff done. So the Tower of Babel problem needs to be solved, right? As a team, when you're working on team projects, you need to be able to communicate effectively so you can coordinate effectively. So you need a shared language, a shared vernacular, a shared vocabulary, a shared grammar about how projects work so that you can make the projects work. So what is that shared vocabulary? And then also, what does it buy you? I guess I want to talk about that first. What is having a shared vocabulary buy you? So hear me out. Here's a few ideas, right? One, I just was hinting at it, is just coordination, right? If you can't communicate effectively on the terms of your project, about who's in charge of what, around where authority is, where priority is, where decision-making rests, what the purpose of your project is, what the goals of the project are, right? If you can't communicate effectively about those types of things, where the risks of your projects are, what failure looks like, right? If everyone isn't aligned on this stuff, oh my gosh, it's going to be a disaster, right? If you can't just sit down in a room and hash out in an hour, I mean, I don't want to put a time limit on it, but if you can't effectively hash out what need you're all addressing, right? What the point of this project even is, and get on the same page, I don't think that project's going to go very well. It's certainly not going to get very far, right? So how do you go about expressing it? A shared vocabulary lets you do that, right? A shared vocabulary, and when you all learn how to speak projectese, right? You know how to express yourself. You know how to get to that shared understanding. Okay, so one, a shared vocabulary allows you to communicate effectively about your project, right? 2, a shared vocabulary allows you to rapidly diagnose problems, right? If you have a shared vocabulary and something starts going sideways, well, you've already communicated effectively about a mutual, like a basic understanding of what's going on. Well, now, oh man, something unexpected happened. A supply chain broke down, and that's going to delay our project 2 weeks to get that part that we were expecting to have. Or maybe your vendor is running late on delivering something that you need, right? Maybe a contract is stuck in the mud. It's stuck with legal. You have nothing to do about it. You're just twiddling your thumbs. And now part of your team is getting real riled up because it's putting pressure on them. It's delaying their progress, right? Project bottlenecks happen. Really, that is the norm, right? They're not the exception. They are the rule. And so how you go about diagnosing where those bottlenecks are and how they fit in to the grand scheme of the project and how that maps or translates into other parts of your project, right? So all of a sudden, hey, we need that tool. It's not going to be here for another 6 months. Okay, well, how do we reallocate that time to the next highest priority in our portfolio of projects, right? If you can't sit down with your team and just hack that out effectively and diagnose and rapidly make decisions, you guys are going to be spinning your wheels. You're going to be lost in the desert, lost in the wilderness, wandering around for 40 years. So not only does a project vocabulary, a shared vocabulary, buy you the ability to communicate effectively, it also buys you the ability to diagnose and then respond effectively, right? If you're a doctor, you don't want to just diagnose the problem. You want to also prescribe a treatment, right? So in this case, same thing. You want to be able to rapidly diagnose the problem, everyone understands it, and then everyone gets on the same page around the treatment, right? If you don't have a shared vocabulary, right? If I call my arm a banana and I call my leg a noodle, and now we're all sitting in a room at a restaurant and I'm ordering noodles and banana, or you're ordering noodles and bananas, I'm gonna be real confused about why you're ordering what you would call a human arm for dinner, right? I think the same thing can be said for projects. What one person calls scoping, or we need to scope that out, they're misattributing that idea to maybe some sort of requirements checklist. What one person calls design, another person calls architecture. What one person calls, like I like to joke around, verification, another might call validation. Right? If you're not on the same page around what people mean when they're saying terms, you might be talking past each other. You might be speaking different languages. So when you go about diagnosing a problem, people are thinking and hearing completely different things. And then when you say the treatment, you say, hey, Kate, I want you to go and instead of focusing your time on this, I want you to just focus your time on that. And when you come back 2 weeks later, she's still been focusing on the wrong thing. How did she not understand you? How did that line of communication that you spoke not land in the ears, right? There's some sort of vocabulary communication breakdown happening. Right? So if you don't have good communication, you can't diagnose effectively in a way everyone understands, and you certainly have a hard time with giving the treatment to the diagnosis here, to the problem. So those are 3 things. Number four is it allows you, a shared vocabulary allows you to be a better leader, right? And in 2 ways, right? So maybe number 4 has 2 sub points. 1, it allows you to understand what people are good at. If everyone is speaking the same language, they're able to clearly and consistently express the parts of projects that they most like, right? Some people really enjoy, for example, the planning and the specification, the writing out of the requirements, etc. I was just on a call this morning, and I could totally tell the person I was working with is very high in specification. They like to do specification. And when it came time to discuss who is on the hook for delivery, right? Not the spec, but who's actually going to be implementing the spec, who's going to be building this solution out. He very clearly expressed that he doesn't do that. That is not what he does. And tried to pawn it off on me, but I got some good skills. I know how to jujitsu my way out of certain things. But I think that is the thing, right? Is you run across certain people that they really like to do certain activities on a project. You meet that person. Hey, that person loves to plan, to spec it out, to design the solution, to figure out all the constraints, all the requirements, right? So you have certain people that really like certain parts of a project. So I gave that example of a guy that loved to specify, right? Loves the designing of the requirements, loves the architecture, writing out the checklist, making sure that the solution is going to fit within the constraints of the environment. But you're going to have other people who might really like to gather up the resources. They're provisioners. They like to make sure everyone on the team has what they need. Do you have the login access you need? Oh, do you have the computers, your computer strong enough to do what you need it to do? Do you have the software you need? Or do you have the car you need? Or the lawnmower you need? It could really be anything, right? You have people that love to provide the resources. They're provisioners. You know, other people that love to get it done. You know, I'm pretty high in delivery myself. I really like to be the person that executes the plan. There's a plan. I love to see it come to life. You know, you have someone who really enjoys doing delivery work. My wife sometimes calls me the delivery man, you know, earning the delivery man badge of honor here. Come on. So there are preferences when it comes to doing project tasks. And if you all speak the same vocabulary, guess what? You can all express your preference for certain tasks, right? Hey, I prefer this and I prefer not to do that. I'm not into verification. Not a double check it kind of guy, right? I like to do it once and then hand it off to somebody else to perfect it. That is my style. And understanding your preferences allow you to communicate effectively with your team, your boss, whoever, about, hey, you know, when I'm working on a project, these are my strengths. I really enjoy these types of things. And these other tasks aren't really my jam. Obviously, everyone's got to do everything, right? Your team, if it's scrappy, everyone's got to do everything. But at least you understand each other's preferences. So if you see someone and they're bogged down doing some really tedious verification, closing out of requirements, you know, going through a checklist of requirements and making sure that they're all satisfied. You can tell they're dying on the inside. You can offer to give them a helping hand, right? But if you can tell if you can tell a different person is going down that requirements, closing out requirements, checking them off the list, and they're lit up. They love it. They're in their element, right? They are in the zone. They have the Zen factor, right? That's good to know. It's good to know that that's the person you can lean on for those types of things. They love it. You know, conversely, you have someone on the other side who they are just locked in on scoping, right? They understand. They just have a natural inclination to really be passionate, to make sure that every project is scoped appropriately, right? That the resources we have available are realistically scoping or constraining the needs we're trying to address. We're not biting off more than we can chew. We are appropriately sizing up the problem in a way that we are feeling confident that we can deliver a solution for. And they have a keen understanding. Their finger is on the pulse of people's constraints, people's capacity, how much time, how much stuff is on each person's plate, what's going on in the next 6 months in the organization, if the organization can swing that or not, right? They just love, they have a natural inclination towards scoping. So getting back, if you're a leader, a good leader, and you all share a vocabulary, you have a really good ability now. It buys you the ability to detect what people are enjoying doing and then assign tasks accordingly, right? You want your team to be happy. I think everyone, unless you're sick and twisted, you're gonna want your people to do well, to enjoy their work. Okay, so that's one under that bullet of being a good leader. The other aspect is it allows you to understand their competency on certain tasks, right? So not just their passion, not just their preferences, but their proficiency, their competency, right? How good are they at, say, scoping? So even if I don't really love scoping, it's not my passion, but at least I'm proficient at it. At least you know I'm good at it. So that when I'm a part of a meeting where we're doing some scoping work, maybe I don't own it, but maybe I collaborate. Maybe I'm someone on the input, racy or something. You want to go to me for some inputs. You know that I'm going to be useful, right? You know that I'm competent at understanding that scoping is all around, understanding where we're at as an organization, as a team, and making sure that the need matches the resources available. So that's another really important factor, because at the end of the day, Michael Hyatt, he developed this thing that's called I believe it's called the Freedom Compass. It's a really helpful framework for thinking about that when it comes to task allocation or task assignment, which is you have your passion on one axis, and then on the other you have your proficiency, right? Your passion and your proficiency. And if you're passionate about something, if you prefer to do something, you enjoy doing something, and you're good at it, well, that's your desire zone, right? That's your sweet spot. That is where you want to be. And as a good leader, you're able to understand people's desire zones. Understand, hey, what about this job on my project team, on this team project, what tasks we need to get done matches the people in their desire zone. They're passionate, they're proficient, and being able to speak the same language enables you to clearly articulate that, right? To say, hey boss, I really, really enjoy delivery work. I love just give me the spec and I'll just get it done. Love it. Or, hey boss, I really enjoy provisioning work. I just love seeing people equipped to do the work. I love enabling the work, making sure everyone has what they need. I'm a big supporter, and also conversely on the flip side, it allows you to keep the certain people off certain tasks, right? There's certain people that might be very passionate about certain things, but not very good at it. And you want to be able to keep them off those tasks. We love them, but some people, they're just not detail oriented. And you need a detail oriented person on certain things. You wouldn't want me closing out requirements. My eyes would glaze over. I would be distracted. I'd find myself down some social media rabbit hole, God forbid. And I've wasted half my day just trying to avoid the work, right? You wouldn't want me doing that. That is true for every person. There are those things that that's just not their jam. And you want to make sure that they're not being assigned to those tasks. So I think that's called the drudgery zone, according to the Freedom Compass framework by Michael Hyatt. Again, what is that? H-Y-A-T-T, Hyatt. Yeah, the drudgery zone is you're not passionate and you're not good at it. You stink at it. And so, yeah, that's definitely some verification activities for me. Oof. Anyway, so that's another thing. So let's recap here. So we got a shared vocabulary. It allows you to communicate effectively, coordinate effectively, which means that you can diagnose problems. You can also treat problems. You can ensure people are working on what they're passionate about in terms of the tasks that need to be done. And you can make sure that they're competent, right? It's a competency evaluation framework as well when you speak that vocabulary. So there's a lot of power in being able to communicate using a shared vocabulary, a shared structured vocabulary. And really that's what we're trying to do here, here at Making Pattern, right? And that's the whole point of this series on project fundamentals, within the show framework, these walk and talks that we're doing. It's really about equipping you to be able to speak that language. Right? You need to be able to speak the language in order to reap the benefits. So how do you get your people on the same page? How do you get them to speak that language? Well, first of all, you all need to start with a basic fundamental understanding of projects. Right? You say, hey, how do we even think about projects? How do we even approach them in our understanding? When a boss comes and says, hey, we're going to launch this new initiative across the company, and I need you and your team to make it happen. Well, my friend, you just had a project kick off. Whether you like it or not, whether you have time for it or not, a project has come to your front door. What are you going to do? Right? Because every project is really three things. And I've talked about this. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to keep talking about it, which is the project is doing three things. The project is just a collection of work tasks, right? A collection of work, collection of tasks that build a solution. At the end of the day, you're building a solution, right? To meet an identified need. Someone has identified a problem. Someone has identified a need, and you need to build the solution for it, right? And how are you gonna do that? Well, you're gonna use your available resources, whatever they are, whether you need to go down to the store and get some more gear, or you got already what you need. You're gonna use and gather available resources to meet that need by building a solution, right? So you got three things. Got needs, resources, and solutions. And how you hit them, how you attack them, well, that's the work, right? That is the point of a project, right? Is to use those needs, define what they are, scope them out, make sure that you clearly have them locked in your people's minds, the project, right? So when a boss comes to you and says, hey, I need you to work on X, well, you can stop and say, why? I'm already doing like 14 other projects. And you already told me that these are all really like tier 1, DEFCON, what would it be, 4, 5, whatever the top is, important, and you're gonna give me more. Okay, well, where does that shake out in the order of importance from all the other priorities that you've given me for all these other projects? Right, you need to be able to offhandedly be able to pull that out of your back pocket to tell your boss to help them immediately help scope this line of work. So using that definition, I'll say it again, you're gonna build a solution to meet an identified need that using available resources. So you need to do work that connects these building blocks, right? Because at the end of the day, every single one of those systems needs resources, and the solution have to be cared for. They all have to be developed. Because when you start a project, the need is fuzzy. The need itself has to be developed. And when you start a project, the resources available to you, you probably know some, but you sure as heck don't know all of them. So you got to do some work figuring out what those resources even are and even what they should be. And the solution, forget about it. Sometimes you're starting with nothing, or worse, you're starting with something that ain't working and you got to fix it. They're leaning on you to do a patch job. Sometimes that's the biggest headache. When you get a legacy system that needs to be upgraded and you start getting in there and you're like, oh, can we just start over? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Right? So every single one of those building blocks you have to build. Right? Maybe that's a tricky way of saying it is you don't build with the building blocks, you build the building blocks, right? You got to build out your need. What exactly is that person asking for? When, I've been on a few calls recently and people just throw solutions at you. You know what I think we should do? I think we need to redesign this web page, and that's what this web page should do. Or, I think we should add this feature to this product because that's gonna fix all the things. And you have to say, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, that's a solution. Thank you for your proposed solution. What need are we trying to address? What are you trying to get at? What problem are you identifying that this is going to be useful for? Because they're just hopping right over it. They're trying to kick off a project, dictating a solution, speccing out a solution before you've even started to understand the need. Right? So needs themselves have to be developed. Maybe you're already specced out a solution. Have you even checked your resources? Do we even have available resources for what we're trying to do all of a sudden? I've agreed to build this thing and haven't even checked if there's money in the bank account, much less time. Resources also have to be identified. They have to be developed. Sometimes you gotta, you do this for me, I do that for you. Quid pro quo. Certain resources take time and effort to gather up, to get. Right? But when you do, it unlocks new kinds of solutions that wouldn't have been possible before, right? So you're not just building a solution, that's ultimately what you're trying to do, but you're developing your resources, you're developing your need. Every time you do validation, every single time you take a solution and you do validation, you're developing, you're refining your understanding of the need you're addressing. I even do it on this project. Right? If you think about my little walk and talk here as a project, you're my guinea pig, right? I get to talk it out with you on my thinking around project development and the making pattern and this vocabulary, this structured vocabulary that people can share. But what I'm looking for is getting validation, right? Not in an insecure way, but to say, hey, you know what? That you're right, that structure of making pattern and how you think about the needs and the resources and the systems and the tasks that you do to develop them and how they're all interconnected, that is like really helping me do X, Y, and Z. And guess what? That helps me, right? That helps me as the creator to know, okay, interesting, like that's really useful feedback for what this is useful for, which will then influence how I go about delivering solutions in the future related to this framework, right? So the need itself is constantly evolving, constantly developing, which as that develops, guess what else develops? Your resources and your solutions, right? If I have an understanding of my need today, and in 10 years it looks different, well, do you think the corresponding solution would look different? Obviously, right? I've said this, if I try to parent my 30-year-old when I'm an old man, like I do a 3-year-old, that solution ain't gonna work, right? Because the problem or the need, which is a relationship with my child, has evolved, it has changed. And in the same way, what's working today at your company is probably not gonna work in 10 years from now. So unless you have a very dialed in understanding of how projects evolve, how organizations evolve, and then how to articulate that using that vocabulary, you're gonna have a really tough time navigating the waters of projects, team projects, helping manage up and manage down. So those are some basic benefits, right? Just to summarize, to land the plane, bringing it home, is we all have to solve the Tower of Babel problem. We all have to figure out how to communicate effectively to do team projects. organization-wide. It's ubiquitous. Everyone has to figure it out. And if you don't have a clear way, to communicate effectively on who's doing what, role-based assignment, authority, decision-making, priorities, purpose, risk, quality, expectations. If you don't have a clear way to do it, you should learn making pattern. You should just learn, you know what? Maybe you don't. Maybe you go learn some other thing. I'm gonna stand by what I've done because I think it's the best thing that is out there, you know? I really do. I feel very confident that this is a very tight, structured model of how projects work. And if you can speak the language of making pattern, you get all of the benefits. You can very rapidly diagnose problems. You can rapidly provide a treatment for them. You can effectively lead your teams. It essentially, I want to say this, it essentially provides you an operating system. Right? If you're a software hardware person, you understand this analogy, is that it affords you, it provides you an operating system that you can develop or use on your team, because everyone here now has downloaded the same software. They're all using the same language, they're using the same apps in their brain, right? You're all sharing a mental model. And so you can hop into a call very quickly, and I experienced this with my team, which is, hey, we need to spec this out better because I'm trying to execute delivery here and I don't understand these 5 details. Who's on charge? Who's on the RACI for speccing out this project? Oh, you are, Tim? Okay, done. Well, can I get some clarification on these things? Yes, why? Oh, okay. And then what about verification? Who's doing verification? Tim again, because those are typically connected. Okay, those are the expectations for what needs to happen. All right, I'll go deliver it. I'll talk to you tomorrow, right? If you're able to do that very efficiently, and then you have your tools that support that. You actually have like software tools or project management tools that support and enable you. Golly, you're cooking with gas, right? You are off to the races. That's a good situation to be in, because chances are your team is not experiencing that. And my goal is to let everybody experience that. My purpose is to enable you, to provide you the tools that you need to be able to communicate effectively, coordinate effectively on your team projects. So that's all for today, and until next time.